grown adult, you know realistically what you can pay per month, what you can pay. And there's a big difference. I mean, you might be able to go out and afford $1,000 a month car payment, but I mean, are you really going to do that? Well, it's the same thing with your residence. If you know that realistically you need to keep your monthly payment somewhere around $2,000, $2,500 a month, but you qualify for a property that you could go up to $4,000 a month. Now, at that particular point, it becomes your own fiscal responsibility to make sure you don't put your family in a position of something you can't afford. That you don't purchase above your means. And I mean, and we all do something to a degree. We'll do something to buy something or do some stuff, above our means. But I tell you, when you do that, particularly in your mortgage, when you do it in your mortgage, you're not allowing yourself just the simple things that happen in life. I mean, think about it. If you can go up to 52% on a ratio in home buying, and all of a sudden 1 month, for whatever reason, like take it for now, we're getting these 100-degree plus temperatures, and now all of a sudden you're running your air conditioner a little bit more than what you normally do, and all of a sudden your air conditioning bill goes up 20% that month. Can you afford that? All of a sudden, maybe something happens where you have a car repair, and you need your car to get back and forth to work. Or, if you have a family and you have children, you definitely know that something is going to come up. If you are living on the edge like that, and anything that can come up can just derail your whole family situation, excuse me, then you really need to take a look at that before entering your mortgage. We want to see everybody buy something, and I will counsel my people. Now I'll sell you what you want to buy, but I will counsel you in the fact that, hey, are you sure this is something you want to do? Because remember, you're signing on for this for 30 years, and what if for whatever reason you do have to stay in this house and make this payment for 30 years? I mean, none of us can have a crystal ball and can foresee the future, but if you're getting into something and you're signing on for 30 years, and in year number 1, you know that there's any hiccup, then you're probably not going to be able to get into it. You're not going to be able to stay there. Then you're just setting yourself up for failure.
I completely agree with you, and I don't think it's a discussion that is had very often, and I wanted a very frank buyer's conversation because the next step is really going to be selecting a house and finding what's right instead of what can I afford, and in this market, that could be really tragic. We are, for those listening, if you're a buyer, we're at the top of the market. Maybe we'll go up a couple more years, but historically, you and I both know this. What goes up will always come down in the real estate market. So if I'm looking at a 30-year investment, I always say the same thing. In fact, we were talking about this not too long ago. I got my ex-wife a condo, helped them out, and her husband, I guess my stepfather, however, I don't know if it's my stepfather, my daughter's stepfather, there you go. It sounds
right.
Really weird that way, right? My daughter's stepfather, my ex-wife's husband, got a VA loan. And they said, what do you think about buying a condo in this market? I said, you have no money in at the top of the market. If the market were to go backwards based on what I know and who I know, you will never get hurt. You have a limited amount of money into the project. You are at no risk from what the market can do. But now if you're telling me I'm putting 3%, 5%, 10%, 20%, hey, I'm in for the haul now. Now I got to see the market up, down, which it will do over 30 years. I mean, you're a homeowner. You've owned your house for a long time. This is something you have to accept. You touched on a couple of really, really good points with that, and that's very true. Number one, the funny part that I'll tell people is that if you own your home, you've purchased and you're in your home now, and you're constantly concerned with the house going up
or down in value and you have no plans on moving or doing something with it, you're just driving yourself crazy. Because at that particular point, it's only monopoly money. Doesn't matter. The other thing I don't think people realize, which you just touched on, is when you're putting down a down payment. And, let's go to
That's real money.
That's real money.
Then it goes into monopoly money, and that's the part that kills me.
Absolutely. And what people have to remember is that, let's say you put 20% down. You put 20% down, and we can just use a $200,000 house, which you and I both know is difficult to find in the areas, at least that I service. But you put down, if you have to put 20% down, we're talking $40,000, right? We're talking $40,000 that you put down out of your own money, not including whatever closing costs and all that is associated with the type of financing that you're able to get. Now, let's suppose that the market reverses or it just sits still. The money that is being lost up until 20% of that is not the bank's money. That's your money.
Yep. And
if you have a situation where you need to sell or whatever the case may be,
bank's not losing it.
that money, man, the bank is in a good position. The bank is going to still get the money that's owed to them when you sell, unless you get under 20%. In value there and quote unquote get into a position of a short sale. But other than that, that money that's being lost is yours. So people have to realize and understand that, and that's why I try to tell people to have when you're buying something, yes, it's an investment, but also if you're living in it, make sure that you're buying something that realistically not only can you afford, but that you'll enjoy living in for the time. I'll give you an example of our own house. My wife gets tired of me telling the story, but it's the truth. And I'm a realtor, there's one or two people out there that'll say I'm a decent realtor. But we bought the home and we're still in this home, and we bought it about 12 years ago. We moved out here for the same reason we were moving clients out here. Our kids were smaller,
yep.
And we had them in private schools out in the San Fernando Valley. And we decided that we wanted to, move. We sold a house out in the valley. We wound up coming out here to Santa Clarita, and we figured that we'd be there at least 10 years because that's what we were giving ourselves as a timeline. No matter what the market do, we could enjoy it. Blah 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 blah. Well, we get into this house, Lee, and believe it or not, because of course you know me, I started marketing and working in the neighborhood, of course.
Right.
We wound up selling. We were in our house a year, maybe a little more. We sold the house directly across the street from ours that was a little bit smaller with no view for almost double what we paid for our house.
Good job increasing your value.
Now, you're right. But now, no kidding. The realtor.
There might be conflict on that. I don't know if we want this episode out.
Yeah, you know what? The realtor in me is like, babe, well, that's just what the market was doing. The market was crazy. So the realtor in me is like, because we didn't buy cheap. When we bought it, it wasn't like, I negotiated some super great deal. We got, we pretty much bought it what the market was. And I'm telling my wife at the time, I'm like, babe, you and I both know we need to sell. And my wife, no, we're not selling. We said we're going to be here 10 years. And da, 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 da. I don't want to move. Where we're going to move to.
Ladder, honey.
My wife, who is also my business partner and works, it's the Elgin Walker team. She works with me.
She is your soulmate and your anchor for your craziness. She is. She is a great one. For those listening, she is just as great.
I'm sitting here like, we need to sell. And my wife like, what are we going to do? I'm thinking like, who cares? It's a double. We'll figure something out. Let's take the money. So, of course, what happens? The market shifts. The market, when the market shifted, we eventually were underwater on this house that if we'd have sold it a couple of years prior, we'd have doubled up on our money. Bottom line, though, is that when we bought it, we did buy it for the intention of living in there for a specific amount of time because it met our family's needs. So although the market may have changed, the reasons why we bought it had not. And we could still afford it and all the other good stuff that comes along with it. So we stuck it out. Now, the market has changed back, and the kids are older, and the home has served its purpose, and we're not moving yet. But, we built up some equity in it, and the price is not a double of where it was when we, where we purchased. But we're a long way from being underwater from where the market has gone the last years. So, when you look at it in that standpoint, and I tell people this, you know what, when our house doubled in value in less than a year, when I walked into Ralph's, I could not go up to the cashier and say, hey, I need a loaf of bread and, put it on my house tab because my house just doubled. Same thing as when my house went underwater, I couldn't walk into Ralph's and say, hey, I want this bread a little bit cheaper because my house isn't worth what it used to be. You see, nobody cares. And that's what I mean about the monopoly money part of it. It didn't mean anything unless we were ready to do something about it at that particular point. So when you buy in, don't buy in and then you're sitting there looking at your house value like it's a stock price and you're watching CNBC all day. You're buying in it because you want to buy in it. Hopefully you get a good entry point and you have good reasons on why you're purchasing it. And you go from there. Now, I'm talking about specifically a home that you're planning to live in. If we were having a discussion about an investment property, we'd be having a whole different type of a discussion. But a property that you're going to live in, that you're, got your family in, you're trying to make memories and all that, for whatever reasons that you're purchasing, you want to look at some of those things as being your anchor for purchasing and for staying in that property if you have to stay there maybe a little longer than you were anticipating.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's the difference between speculation and home. It's funny as you say it, I was sitting here thinking, if the government wanted to be really crazy or a lending institution, they should treat it like a car loan. If you have enough of a down payment, you can have a house. And it shouldn't matter your FICO score almost. If I would put, and the market is so tight in lending standards, and that's another thing to have a discussion about really quickly. The lending standards are tighter. I mean, I'm playing golf tomorrow with our friend who is a broker, Fred Solomon, and he has convinced me that funny money deals exist, and because the rates are so low, the hard money sources have absorbed the market. But, people just seem to want the traditional big bank financing, and they're not as I think people are afraid of private investment, private money to finance their house. And in the reality of having Wells, Chase, or B of A financing me right now, I better be pretty spotless and still have about 10 to 20% to come into this. Oh, and by the way, I can't be self-employed.
Right. Oh no, right. You're absolutely right. And the only way you can get in, and not the only way, but I should just say the way to get in without having to go through some of those type of guidelines is if you happen to be able to qualify FHA or VA. If you're qualifying for a conventional loan right now, and it's better than it was, say, a year or two ago, but it's still pretty tight. And and in my personal opinion, it's very selective, and it changes from institution to institution, based upon whatever their own internal criteria are as well. And all they really care about is how fast they can sell you that to Fannie Mae once they get you in. They're not trying to hold your paper. And I agree that there are private financing out there, but I think that there's just a stigma that people have with some of the private financing out there, just based upon old war stories, based upon old war stories. But you know what, Lee, it's funny how you brought up the FICO thing, because again, you and I, there aren't a whole lot of people that I speak to on a regular basis that have been around in this thing as long as I have now. And I still remember being a new kid on the block, other than, guys like you. But I remember, what was it, just maybe, 10, no more than 15 years ago, when there was a FICO score.
Yeah.
Nothing was, you didn't, that wasn't how you qualified, was with a FICO score.
That's
and
correct.
nobody, at least I shouldn't say anybody,